Greetings, the DN here, or the Dapper Nerd. Welcome back. Today's subject, Superman as savior figure. One aspect of the Man of Steel or trailers that have generated some controversy of late is that they seem to portray Superman as a kind of savior figure. Well, I've got a news flash. There is no seems about it. Superman was largely conceived as, and is, and probably always will be, a savior figure. Of sorts. Anyone who's put off by this notion either just doesn't understand the character or his origins that well, or frankly, are just looking for an excuse to grind their teeth. Let it never be forgotten that Superman was created by two Jewish guys, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, themselves children of European immigrants, and that the Europe of the time that Superman was created, that's circa late 1930s, was being crushed under the jackboot of Nazi Germany. And it was also on a crash course for a world war, a war that would ultimately consume tens of millions of lives. The creation of Superman was largely a response to the Nazi ideal of the so-called Übermensch, the Superman, the Overman. This was a character created by Friedrich Nietzsche in his political and philosophic treatises. Thus Spake Zarathustra, and I think later on he incorporated the character in Beyond Good and Evil. At any rate, I'm no Nietzsche scholar, but I know enough to know that the Übermensch, as he envisioned it, and the Übermensch as the Nazis appropriated it and twisted it, were two completely different things. And it actually is a pretty fascinating read and an interesting take on the human condition. So, if you feel so inclined, check it out. For our purposes here, what we need to understand is that Superman, our Superman, Kal-El of Krypton, he himself was also envisioned by his creators as a kind of ideal man, but with a couple of crucial exceptions. One being that Superman retained a strong Judeo-Christian sense of morality. Another was that he was susceptible to the same frailties, the same emotional frailties that we were. This is what made him such an endearing character. Anyone who doubts the importance of Superman's Judeo-Christian roots, both in their literal and their metaphorical sense, really needs only read up on the history of the creation of the character. I would suggest that, and I would suggest directing your attention to an essay entitled Superman, From Antichrist to Christ Type, by a philosopher named Adam Barkman. The essay can be found in a book called Superman and Philosophy, What Would the Man of Steel Do?, which I recently purchased. Very much worth reading. There's a lot of insights into the psychology of Superman, the history of Superman, and more importantly, his Judeo-Christian roots. Don't be misled here. I'm not advocating the Judeo-Christian worldview. I'm just relaying the facts behind the creation of the character. That's all. Yes, there are some distinctly Judeo-Christian aspects to the Superman character. Stuff that actually runs fairly deep and which is unique to those religious traditions. But on an even deeper and more fundamental level, I think there's something else at work with this character that imbues him with universal appeal. Something that transcends race, transcends religion, transcends any of the specific trappings of any culture. And that something is this: that all of us, that's humans everywhere, across space, across time, across culture, have had a notion that the best parts of ourselves, what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our nature, that these things were worthy of being remembered, recorded, and passed down to succeeding generations. Think of it like this. I'm going to sip of my coffee here. Think of it like this. We're all acutely aware of what we are. We know limitation. We know pain. We know sickness. We know suffering. We see and we feel what disease does to our bodies. We also see what we do to each other. the atrocities we commit against one another and against ourselves. To read our human history, to open yourself up truly to our human history, is exhilarating and it's fascinating, but it's also heartbreaking, and it's filled with some very stark and unpalatable truths about ourselves. Truths that we have no choice but to acknowledge, and even to a large extent we have to embrace them. But ironically, it's our very awareness of this darker side of our natures that allows us to dream of the light. To dream of being something better. It's like Jarrell says in the trailer, and I'm not going to even try to do an awesome, Russell Crowe impression. Russell Crowe is inimitable. You can't mimic the guy. He's great. But basically, the dialogue is, I know it by heart. They will stumble, they will fall, but in time, they will join you in the sun. In time, he will help them to accomplish wonders. And then Superman flies off. I mean, yes, this is the essence of Superman. He's a symbol of the light. He's a symbol of our best and our brightest and our most hopeful dreams of what we can aspire to, both as individuals and as a species. That's why I think Superman has enjoyed universal appeal in his almost 80 years of existence. That's why perfectly grown adults across the world watch these new trailers with a huge smile on their faces, and some of them with a lump in their throat, choking up with emotion. I mean, I choked up watching the trailers. It's a very compelling character. Superman doesn't exist. Not in our real world. We all know that. But we also know that we have something better than Superman. We have the idea of Superman. And I think that that idea, in one form or another, has been with us for a long, long time. And so that's what we should take from it. Not get wrapped around the axle that he's a savior figure, or that he's a Christ figure, or a Moses figure. Yes, in some broad sense, he is a savior figure. But he's a symbol of the notion that we have the potential to save ourselves. This, I think, is the beauty and the magic of this character. And because of that, Superman belongs to all of us. Thanks for watching and listening, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.